And, the article that you mentioned, our PactNet, which is available to your viewers free of charge on the internet.
Address
Right.
pacificforum.org.
Yeah. I said in there, experience tells us 50% of what any candidate says is wrong, is not true. The challenge is figuring out what 50%. And with Trump, we're hoping it's more going to be like 70-30. And I think it will be. I think it will be, because at the end of the day, A, reality sets in. B, we have checks and balances. If you want to build a beautiful wall, the Congress has to fund it. Well, the Congress is talking about, well, maybe we'll have a fence, or maybe we'll have a drone or something like that. So, reality sets in. Ronald Reagan was going to recognize Taiwan. Jimmy Carter was going to pull all of our troops out of Korea. Then reality sets in when they become president. So I think we shouldn't spend an awful lot of time trying to go back and hold him to some of the silly things that were said. Instead, we ought to be applauding when he seems to be moving more in the realistic direction.
Yeah. But what I get from your remarks today is that on the one hand, reality sets in. It's the only diplomacy is based on reality.
Yeah.
On the other hand,
you got to start from where you are.
But they're true feelings, and the feelings of the people behind them, the governments behind them in Asia, for example, must be at a level of concern because of the statements they made before. So if you have, on the face of it, yes, we want to make friends. We recognize the reality that you were elected. On the other hand, you made all these statements that give such concern. How does that affect their actions, since they likely worry about some of those things coming true?
You walk on eggshells for a while until you actually get to meet face to face. And I've never met him face to face, but people say he's a charming man, and as a businessman, he knows how to finesse things and how to tell people what they want to hear. There's two sides. 8 years ago, expectations were so high for Barack Obama. He was so welcomed because he was going to bring about change and et cetera, that he actually had a hard time living up to the expectations. It'll be a lot easier for Trump to live up to the expectations right now because they're pretty
so
low.
low.
And that's not necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah. 8 years ago, you'll agree that the world was different.
Absolutely.
In terms of Thomas Friedman's process of globalism and all that. So now
we're more globalized
we're
today
more
than
globalized.
we were 8 years ago.
And my question to you is, how does that process of globalization, which is, may I say, global?
Yeah. You can coin that phrase. Yeah, okay, let's.
How does that
you
affect,
heard it here first, folks.
Thank you.
Right.
How does that affect diplomacy and policy in the international arena when you have globalization, more interdependence than was imaginable a few years ago?
Yeah, well, it means that what you say and do matters to more than just you or your voters. And most presidents grasped that pretty quickly. Most of them knew that before they came in. I don't believe Trump is a dumb man. I think he understands all of that. And just, again, we've got very small tidbits to latch on right now. But if you listen to what Park Geun-hye said he told her in their conversation, this says the man gets it. He understands the anxiety. He understands the need for an alliance. He understands the reassurance aspect. And at the end of the day, it comes down to reassurance, reassurance, reassurance. That's what a president needs to do. That's what a president-elect needs to do. I'm hoping we'll see a little bit more about that. Right now, everyone is watching for one key announcement, and that's who will be Secretary of State. And that will tell us a lot, good or bad. And we sort of cross our fingers and hope for the best on that one.
Big question is Trump's method of operating, which is derived from his business experience or has been successful in his business experience, winning by intimidation, if you will. Does that work in an international setting? Can you actually achieve things by trying to win through intimidation?
Depends on who you're trying to intimidate.
Okay.
What we've discovered over the last 50 years, both Republican and Democrats, both softies and hardliners, is that North Koreans aren't easily intimidated. So, you try to give them a threat, they respond in ways that are not very pleasant. And every president goes through his dance with the North Koreans to figure out what's the right thing to say. Chinese are not easily intimidated. There are some countries that have no option but to be easily intimidated. So it varies, and there's not a one size fits all. And again, when you're doing business in those countries, you understand you have to do business differently in Japan than you do in China or than you do in Europe. So hopefully this carries over.
It's a level of sophistication that a president must have, or if he doesn't have it, he has to learn it.
And he has to have people around him who know it.
Yeah, touche on that.
Yeah.
So I guess I would take it from the remarks in the campaign that Trump has not known very much about the finesse points of doing diplomacy in Asia Pacific, but that he might be a quick learner.
Yeah, A, I think he can be a quick learner. B, we may all be whistling past a graveyard here, and we're going to be very upset in a couple of months. But I prefer to think about the positive outcome until somebody convinces me it's the negative outcome. And keep in mind, Trump was masterful, absolutely masterful in playing to his audience and winning the election. People in Japan weren't voting. People in China weren't voting. People in Europe weren't voting. He was aiming his comments toward the Rust Belt, and it was successful beyond anyone's dreams. I mean, I was with the group of everyone else that was assuming, who's going to do this for Clinton and who's going to do that. We were all kind of shocked. So A, don't underestimate the guy. B, don't assume that he's going to talk to the rest of the world the way he was talking to the people who he was trying to get their vote, because that's what politicians do. And he was a very quick learner as a politician.
Yes.
So now let's hope he's a quick learner as an international diplomat and leader.
Okay, those are the general points.
Yeah.
We're going to take a short break. We're going to come back with Ralph Kosa, President of Pacific Forum CSIS. We're going to get the advice that he would offer Trump as to how to conduct Asia foreign policy. In 1 minute, we'll be back. That'll be really interesting.
Boy, I can't wait to hear what I have to say.
Hello, I'm Marianne Sasaki. Welcome to Think Tech Hawaii, where some of the most interesting conversations in Honolulu go on. I have a show on Wednesdays from 1 to 2 called Life in the Law, where we discuss legal issues, politics, governmental topics, and a whole host of issues. I hope you'll join me.
Aloha, my name is Reg Baker, and I'm the host of Business in Hawaii with Reg Baker. We're a show that broadcasts live every Thursday from 2 to 2:30. We highlight success stories in Hawaii of both businesses and individuals. We learn their secrets to success, which is always valuable. I hope to see you on our next show. Aloha.
Aloha everyone, I'm Maria Mera and I'm here to invite you to my bilingual show, Viva Hawaii, every other Monday at 3 p.m. We are here to show you news, issues and events, local and around the world. Join me.
Okay, we're back. We're live with Ralph Kosa, President of Pacific Forum CSIS, which is an international diplomacy think tank right here in Honolulu. And today we're talking about what should Japan's policy be? What should Trump's policy be to Asia, and what should Japan's policy be to the Trump administration? It's more than Japan; it's all of Asia.
Yeah.
So let's look at it from the Trump point of view first. What would you suggest that the United States does, that he does, and that his Secretary of State does, going forward in 2017, to what was the term you used, to bond up, and connect up and stay connected with Asia?
Yeah. In real estate, it's location, location, location. In government, it's reassurance, reassurance, reassurance. I believe there'll be a lot of continuity in our policy, but I think that they need to hear from Mr. Trump about that continuity. So if in fact he told President Park all the things that she said he said, he needs to be saying those to the general public. Yes, I recognize the importance of our alliances, I recognize the stability that an American presence and commitment in Asia and in the world matters. I understand NATO is important, and these type of things. I think that one of the important things that he needs to look at is the Trans-Pacific Partnership. He ran against it. So did Hillary. Obama ran against NAFTA. Obama ran against the Korean Free Trade Agreement, and then he implemented it. Bill Clinton ran against NAFTA, and then he was hanged by Trump and others for being Mr. NAFTA. You know, it's fine when you're running for office to run against free trade, but when you're the President of the United States, you need to take another look and say, okay, how do we fix this? We don't throw it away, we fix it. How do we engage with China? How do we not start a new Cold War with the Chinese? And I think that's critical. And I think to do that, you need to at least indicate that that's your desires. Global warming is another issue, which, you know, we take personally here, living on an island. Is Trump really a denier? I don't know. I don't know what he really thinks. I don't know what he really thinks about anything.
That's true. All
to
those
be honest,
statements that he made,
yeah.
we don't know if he really means it or whether he's going to do it
Yeah,
or not do it.
and a lot of things contradicted other things that he said. So, you know, let's forget about holding him accountable for all of the contradictions. And instead, let's say, okay, here we are. You got to start from where you are. Here we are today. Global warming is a fact. You can say, yes, it's because of coal, or you can say, no, it's because of something else, but it's still a fact that we need to deal with. How do we deal with it? I'll tell you, it was personally embarrassing to me. I was in China last week, as I mentioned. The Chinese were lecturing us, lecturing the Americans in the room about how we needed to take climate change seriously and how we needed to do all these other things. And I said, boy, talk about turnabout being
really
fair play.
180.
All the things we've, you know, lectured the Chinese on, they're now, you know, you guys need to be responsible stakeholders. Well, you know, unfortunately, they're right.
Next thing you know, they'll be lecturing us on human rights.
That's right, yeah. That comes next, I guess.
Well, you know, what about some of these specifics? For example, the pivot, okay? The pivot is dead, but long live the pivot. How does
That's
that
right.
work, and
Yeah,
how should it work now?
Yeah, I mean, the pivot is dead, long live the pivot. What I'm saying there is that the pivot as a term, the rebalance, was an Obama term. But the decision for the United States to focus on Asia occurred under the Bush administration, the George H.W. Bush administration, 1989, the East Asia Strategy Initiative, which essentially said the 21st century is going to be the Pacific century and the U.S. needs to be fully engaged.
True and important.
Important in 1989, in 91, then in 93, Bill Clinton issued an East Asia Strategy Report, which said everything that H.W. Bush said was true, and this is where we need to focus. George W. Bush got sidetracked with
Iraq.
But George W. Bush also began the U.S. enhanced partnership with ASEAN, with Southeast Asia, because of a recognition that this area is still important. Obama reaffirmed it. The pivot was a terrible term for the right policy, which was reminding people that we effect on it. Now, if Hillary had won, she would have come up with a new term, even though she invented pivot, because that's Obama's term. She had to have her own. So Trump will come up with a new term at some point, which will say what everybody knows, which is that Asia is important. We need to remain engaged there. We need to focus on it. That's why the pivot may be dead, but it's still in another name, in another, you know, buzzword. We'll continue to do that because it's in our national interest to do it. Remember, Churchill said, you know, Americans do the right thing after exhausting all other possibilities. We've spent the last year exhausting all other possibilities. Now it's time for us to do the right thing.
What happens in a practical sense if the people that he was talking to in the Rust Belt, you know, they bought it? They bought it that we should close the borders, that we should ignore Asia, ignore Europe,